We
This
did
is
it!
so good.
Finally.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Oh, okay. You know, we started 3 minutes early. Do you think we
Okay.
should, hey,
So we,
we,
we just go for it, yeah?
shall we just go for it? It's fine, isn't
Yeah,
it?
we can
Yeah.
we can go
Okay.
for it. We
So
can
let
be
me,
spontaneous.
yeah. So for those listening, I'm just going to have a look because these controls can be a bit interesting sometimes. So welcome to episode 2 of my Insta Live series, which is called Homeopathic Voices from Around the World. And the objective, as I said last time as well, is very much to invite guests who have been on the podcast to come back and to have a virtual coffee, sit in a virtual lounge, the lounge that is Insta Live, and also to invite other guests who perhaps cannot be scheduled in immediately. So, you know, the podcast that I do comes out once a week, so that's 52 guests over a year. But there's so many, well, every single homeopath is amazing and incredible, be they a student or a graduate or you know, an author or somebody who's working in a remote part of Africa even, you know, serving humanity through homeopathy there. So it's everybody. So I thought I'd start this series really just to get people together and talk all things homeopathy and have a good homeopathic gossip. So,
No.
and with that, I'm absolutely delighted to say that I'm joined by Tania Aroha-Twentyman, who you can see. Tania was my guest on episode 30 of the Homeopathy Health Show, the podcast. And we've become really good friends since. And it's just amazing because Tania is in Waiheke Island lives on Waiheke Island in New Zealand. So for her, in the UK, for those watching around the world, in the UK, it's Monday and the time is 8 p.m. according to GMT. But for Tania, it's 9 a.m. tomorrow. So I'm back to the future, right?
Yeah.
I'm so happy to see you. It's been ages. It seems like ages, even though we communicate nearly every day, right?
That's right. And thank you so much for having me on. It's a real privilege to be on, and just seeing all these guests that you've been interviewing, I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel a little bit like here I am in little old New Zealand down the bottom of the world, and you're getting all these, you know, the who's who in homeopathy on your podcast. And I'm like, how do you get the time? How do you get the time to do this? I don't
You
know.
know, I tell you what, yesterday I was delivering a CPD lecture at Chichester University, and it was a series that was 4 lectures. So it was about 6 hours of talking.
Yeah.
And it went amazing. Fantastic college, fantastic school, rather. Fantastic students. I mean, really amazing. You know, what an experience. I tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed that one. And I came home and then I started planning for this because I'm thinking, you know, they say, don't they, that you get to a stage where you just go all out and you do the best that you can for your field and to promote it and to raise awareness. And you know what I'm like. I just love promoting homeopathy and everything to do with homeopathy and all the people associated with homeopathy. I just think it's brilliant to get everyone together and have this big resounding voice.
And I think, you know, that's something that you've achieved amazingly well. You've made this planet seem sort of closer together, you know, by bringing people from around the world. And, you know, like you say, you know, we were saying before, there's the who's who of homeopathy, and then there's the students that have just graduated and, you know, homeopaths from around the world. So, yeah, I feel like it's achieved this amazing connection with each other. And then, you know, last week, I think it was last week or the week before, you connected me with the Kim Elia, you know, who you also interviewed, and we did a Zoom meeting for people supporting the movie Introducing Homeopathy, which is coming out next year. And it was like, oh my goodness, I'm in the Zoom room with all these famous homeopaths.
It's surreal,
like
isn't
a
it?
homeopathic groupie, like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, Dana, oh man, you know, like,
I felt that. I felt the same. I felt it was a really odd, wasn't it? A surreal moment, and you think,
yeah,
wow, you know,
yeah,
this is something. But
yeah.
that film is going to be absolutely incredible, and I just can't wait. And I'm in I talk every day to Mickey, pretty much via email, and we communicate every day about what's going on, and there's some new updates coming out.
Okay.
So yeah, it's really exciting times for homeopathy. And
Yeah.
as you've mentioned as well previously, and as have I, this is the time, isn't it? This time
Yeah.
that we're in, these next 12 months are very major for homeopathy to truly make its mark again. I mean, it's already made its mark in
Mm.
the early years, we know. But obviously things change, people change. But now I think it's the time that people are looking at alternative health therapies generally on a very serious um, level, and they want to know more.
Mm.
And it's everything seems to be coming together so beautifully well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I was also thinking this morning before we hopped on live, I'm like, oh, this is a little bit like taking a homeopathic case. Like, we haven't scripted this. I don't know what you're going to ask. You don't know what I'm going to ask, and
Hey,
it's
I've
a
got
little bit
questions.
like
I've got
that.
questions for you.
Oh, have you? Okay, I've got questions for you, Artie.
No, this is a lounge. There are no questions. It's a conversation, right? Join
Yeah,
the conversation
exactly.
and be
Which
inspired.
is how we take our cases, right?
Yeah.
And I think I might have mentioned before, I love case taking because I love that it's so dynamic and you don't know what's going to come out and you don't know where it's going to
Yeah.
go, and it is so homeopathic. Like, it is like with like how you take the case of someone, and just the privilege to hear someone's story, and they tell you something they never told anyone before, and also the personal growth that you go through. Sometimes you're like, well, I don't know, I'm not getting the information I need here. How do I change myself? How do I put that question in a way that that person can understand, or I can get the right information? And yeah, and so it is that dance that you do. And
Yeah.
I have to say, I think teenagers are probably the most challenging. You get grunted at a
Yeah.
few times, so you really got to like dig deep and go, okay, where can we find the place that we meet that I will get the information that I need? And that's where I have a lot of respect for animal homeopaths, because it's like you have to hear through the owner their perception of the animal, and I imagine it takes a lot of intuition and a lot of observation to really understand what that animal's telling you through its, what remedy it needs through its vital force. Mm.
That's really interesting you said that, observation, because that is actually the key. I found it's the observation, because you can be the best case taker. You can take the best case. You can spend 5 minutes or you can spend 2 hours. But sometimes just the observation, or should I say, primarily, if you observe the patient, you learn so much. And sometimes we've all been in this situation, just as they're leaving, they say something
Yeah,
or they do something, and it just gives you that remedy, and it's
yeah.
like a light bulb, isn't it? You think, oh my God, it's not none of this. And
Mm.
it's quite interesting because Jan Scholten, Dr. Jan Scholten, who everybody knows from the periodic table, and the work that he's done there as such. But he talks about in his new book, Cure is Freedom, he talks about personalities, and it's just incredible what he talks about as far as people and the situations that we can become entangled within. Look, life is not easy. We all have trials and tribulations, worries and anxieties. We have happy days. We have bad days, right? It's just life. That's just
Mm.
life. But he says that if you're stuck in a certain situation long enough, it's like a layer of another personality. And then there's another layer that follows on from that. And we're trying to, you've heard in homeopathy, don't you? For a chronic case, you peel away the layers of
Yeah,
the onion, right? And he's
yeah.
just put it so beautifully. And
Ah,
in fact, I have to say here, even though this is going to go off on tangent here, but we're still talking about the periodic table here, where this is the examples that Jan is using. But I was talking to Jeremy Sher, and his work he's done on the noble gases, and he's coming on the podcast very soon. I mean, it's recorded; it just has to be scheduled and come out. And he was talking about the noble gases, and then he explained in such a beautiful manner how every other element on the table wants to become close to the noble gas. That's what they're looking up to. And sometimes when somebody explains it so beautifully, it really brings things home and it makes it so crystal clear. You can read as many books as you want, but it just
Mm.
doesn't click sometimes. But when you actually hear someone explain it in such an eloquent way, you think, oh my God, it makes sense, you know? So
Yeah.
anyway, I go off tangent, but these are the masters that we have, right? They're amazing, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, a lifetime dedicated, you know, so many hours. That's the thing I'm always in awe of, like how, you know, Jeremy and Jan Scholten and Sunken and all these people that they get time to practice,
Hmm.
have a busy practice, write books, do courses. I'm like, oh, you know,
It's
like it's
amazing,
just
isn't it?
every, you know, their living, waking hours must be spent, you know, immersed in homeopathy, and that, you know, it's
I,
such a gift to
yeah.
the world.
I'll give you an example. Jan Scholten, with respect, obviously, Dr. Jan Scholten, you know, but
Yeah.
it's fine. Jan Scholten, he has his own clinic with a team of doctors, and he's doing that, and he's authoring books at the same time, and he's delivering lectures and traveling, and obviously seeing patients firsthand. And then Jeremy Sher and Camilla Sher, both of them, the Dynamist School is running for advanced medicine, an incredible school in the UK, but you know goes out students from around the world. But they're spending their time in Tanzania,
Mm,
serving the local community. I mean, come on, you know,
mm,
that's so brilliant, right? And then you've got
mm.
Dr. Sankaran, who's teaching, who's thinking of new sensation concepts or whatever it is that he's doing, you know, and at the same time, he's seeing patients. So it goes back to what you said. It's amazing how much homeopaths can achieve, which is all to do with goodness and giving back and just help, isn't it? It's never take. It's always give.
Yeah. But also, I think for those students or those practitioners just starting out, or people that are coming back to their practice after their family, it's like it doesn't have to be this big force either. Like you can just help one person at a time. Just
Yeah,
do what's kind of in your bowl. You know, see what, you know, what turns up in your bowl of life, and every one of those, every person that you help is amazing. You know, it doesn't have to be that you're seeing hundreds and hundreds of patients or clients, and just every person that you meet is someone's life that you've touched through homeopathy. And you know, even just listening to someone's story, again, that's why I love the case taking, because it's not very often that we give each other time just to really, you know, go deep, you know, do a whole snapshot of your life or even your child's life. You know, I love doing that when you get a mother in and you're like, tell me about your pregnancy, and people are like, oh, okay, oh, and not even connecting that the pregnancy is such an important part, like you say, of the layer of that child, you know, and then life events that have happened have created another layer. And it's a beautiful, I think that brings healing in itself when a mother or parent sit and really take a biography of that child's life and the things that have happened, and then you start to see these patterns weaving through. And you know, that's the kind of investigative part of homeopathy that you're like, where's the theme here? Where do all these threads come together? What's the vital force trying to express that it needs in order to come back to balance? And
yeah,
sometimes, like you say, it's really simple. And you know, we've all had those beautiful cases where I had someone come in once, and you know, I took her case, and I was like, I'm really, she needs a snake remedy. I know that she needs a snake remedy. And then just after I thought that, she pulled up her sleeves and up her arm was tattooed this big snake. And you're like, oh, I love it when that happens. You know, you just have a confirmation that you're like, oh, that's so cool. You know,
yeah.
when you get cases like that. I've had another case where I was thinking of giving um, a bird essence from New Zealand. There was a homeopath in New Zealand that did some essences, and I had a bird hit the window. It was a tui, and it was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to go and look at that. You know, like being open to the fact. And I heard Dr. Scholten say this when he came to New Zealand years ago, when he first had discovered the lanthanides, and he'd just written his book on the lanthanides, and he was like, you know, sometimes the remedy will come to me in a dream. Like, don't get fixated that it's got to come through the repertory. Keep the mind open, you know, and it will come. And then obviously there's other times where you're like, I have no idea what this remedy is, and you back to like rubrics and, you know, searching through your books and things like that. But it's pretty magical when you just keep the mind very, very open and the consciousness very open and see what comes. Doesn't always work like that, but it's nice when it happens, you know.
You said
Mm.
something very interesting there, you know, at the beginning of this. You said you know, it's about even one person at a time. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And
Yeah.
Ian Watson is on the podcast on Thursday. The podcast is
Oh,
out this
cool.
Thursday. And he talks about this. He says, you know, I'm doing my thing, Atik, in a small way. And, you know, near the end of the podcast, you know, we were just thanking each other. And he said something, and he said, you know, I'm just trying to do the best I can in my own small way. And
Mm.
same as you, Atik, you're doing this podcast and whatever else you're doing, you know, to promote
Yeah.
homeopathy. And it's in a small way. But it's the small things sometimes that make the biggest difference because they matter.
Mm.
And if you can change one person's life, and I know you're changing the lives of hundreds of people because I have connections, so I know the good work that you're doing.
Thank
I'm
you.
well connected now. I can tell you very well. You know, in the airport they have that radar, don't they, to
Yeah.
pick up the plane signals? That's me all day, ding ding ding.
Ah, cute.
But you know, it's so amazing because you're in, you know, your time zone wise, you're in Tuesday, right? I'm in Monday, but it goes the same with people when you see a patient and you're helping so many people, and that because of what you've done, they've got their life, or they've stood up again, or they've, you know, they've pulled their socks up as such, you know, and
Mm.
they've been able to move on with their life, and they've been able to achieve more success.
Yeah.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Like you say, one person at a time. It doesn't have to be 100 or 200.
Mm.
One, that's enough. You
Mm.
start with one, and then you start with, then it goes to two, and then to three. But that's the beauty, isn't it, Tanya, of homeopathy? It's simple, it's effective, and my God, is it powerful, you know?
Mm. Mm. Yeah. And it's that thing of paying it forward, you know. And I think Jeremy really showed that when he went to Africa, and he was like,
Mm,
I don't know, they had how, I don't remember numbers very well, but they had X amount of people they wanted to treat with
yeah,
homeopathy. And so they then, you know, very cleverly trained homeopaths who could then see people, and then you get this kind of pyramid, I guess,
yeah,
effect. But it's the same thing of like what we're talking about, even if you're not a homeopath and you're just someone on listening, you know, just small acts of kindness, you know, small moments of being present with someone, because I think we're so time poor. And just to really, if you're in the supermarket, you know, give someone, an elderly person or something, a smile, or I don't know, give of your time, you know. And then that person's life then touches someone else's life and touches someone else's
mm,
life. And working with parents is great like that too, because if we parent really well, then those children parent really well. And you know what I mean? It's this kind of flow on effect. And there's nothing like your children to bring up your stuff that you need to work through, you know, like, but if you do it, and I think you strive to do it, and your children see, like, you don't always get it right, and you're working on yourself and you're trying it again, you know, you try better next time. I think it's setting that good example as well. So,
it is, it's so, it can change so many lives. And like you said, sometimes it's not even homeopathy, it's just having that shoulder for someone to lean on, or holding out your hand so they can hold on to it. And you know, 50%, they say, you know, this old saying, isn't it? There's 50% of the cure is in talking or listening. And it
yeah,
is. How
yeah,
many people have you, because you're a consciousness coach, for those who aren't aware, Tania is also a consciousness coach as well as a very established homeopath. And, you know, using those two, and I link this because I'm just interested, because I just was listening to, I was just sound checking Ian Watson's podcast. So it's edited, it's in the can, and I was just checking it before I did the final upload. And he's obviously also into this, you know, into consciousness and
yeah.
um, looking at mental health problems and emotional upsets, and why people necessarily get themselves into cyclic fits of anxiety or cycles of anxiety, and or worry or depression, and how are the ways to come out. And that's very much to do with consciousness, isn't it? Because
Mm,
of what you think, how you think, what you're aware of, what you take seriously and what you don't. Am I right?
mm.
Or, I mean,
Yeah,
do
yeah, I
elaborate.
think so. And um yeah, I've always, like, I had a friend that would say to me, you know, you're a homeopath plus more, and how do you describe the more? And I think in homeopathy we also have that little, you know, stumbling block sometimes, as people don't understand what it is, and how do you find words to describe this thing that you
Yeah.
do. And so consciousness coach was, you know, it comes close to that other part of my work that I do that people seek me out for. And essentially it is pretty much homeopathy, but it's less concentrated on the physical and more concentrated on bringing awareness to patterns, thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, and then using the remedies to shift those, you know. So what remedy resonance has that thing around rejection in relationships, or that thing around money, that this is this pattern that this person has repeated. And often people don't realize that they've repeated a pattern. And so then my job in there is to bring that conscious awareness to, here's this pattern, this thought, or this belief. And, you know, neuroscience is showing this now, you know, that we have these thoughts, we have these beliefs, we have these behaviors, and we believe them into reality because our behaviors will back up the thoughts we have about ourselves, you know. So we keep, and so I'm really passionate about helping people break some of those. And and if you combine the session with the remedies, you know, I really believe the remedies go to these subconscious places that we can't access. And the beautiful thing is you don't have to remember all the trauma. You don't have to remember, you know, just to bring your awareness to the fact that you've got this pattern. And then you just let the remedy do its work, you know. And it could take that person hours of therapy or hours of meditation to crunch through that block or that pattern, but you give the remedy and it's like bang. But the more we can become conscious of our unconscious behavior, then that's stepping into mastery, you know, because then we get to choose. We're not just reacting, then we are more in the frontal lobe, you know, in that place that is that higher functioning. And then we get to make conscious choices. Do I want to keep repeating this pattern, you know, and make a difference in that way? And I think that's where humanity is going, is more into that way of being. But look, for most people are just trying to survive on the planet and are reacting very much unconsciously most of the time. But bringing consciousness brings the power to it. But I can't take out the homeopathy, because I'm always like, after the session, I'm like, well, if you just take this remedy, you know, like I know that it's going to shift that thing for you. It's powerful, and you know, you don't need to prove it, because you see it happen again and again and again, and you give a remedy and someone all of a sudden heals that family relationship that has, you know. I mean, it doesn't always happen like that, but when it happens, you sort of end up almost taking it for granted after a while. You know, you're like, yeah, of course you're going to have. And people say things like, after a really good remedy, often you probably get the same people say, it's subtle, but it's profound.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
It's so subtle, but the change is so profound. Yeah. So
I have a question for you, though. On consciousness, and I'm not putting you on the spot, but I'm just, it'd be
I
interesting
feel
to
like
know.
you're going to.
No, I'm not. I promise you I won't. Just we can just talk about it. But let's say, you know, anxiety is rife nowadays, and I see so many people who have anxiety. From a consciousness point of view, how does one get him or her out of that cycle, that vicious cycle of constant anxiety? Because, you know, it can build up, and sometimes it hasn't even happened, and it's an event that you're worried about, for example, and you're just so anxious about it. And yet sometimes, or many of the time, in the majority of cases, when the day of the event comes, the person's absolutely fine. How do you get out of, not from a consciousness point of view, what are the thoughts, or what are the systems people can adopt to help them, to make them stronger with that thought process?
So often what you find when there's a lot of anxiety is that there's somewhere where the nervous system has been activated, that it stayed in that fright, fight, freeze, and the fawn response. Not everyone knows, but it's kind of like being extra good or making up to someone just because you want to keep everything. So often the nervous system's kind of stuck, and I think the more that you can so that consciousness is also about education in a way, I guess. The more that you can help someone understand their nervous system and how it reacts in certain situations, you start to create not only understanding but self-compassion. So then there can be some self-soothing, or even just someone understanding, oh, I'm really anxious here because of this thing that happened there, or because, like, for example, a lot of women have a lot of anxiety at menopause. Just with the hormonal change, it kicks in a lot of anxiety. So just creating conscious awareness around the why actually starts to help, you know, that process. And then of course, you know, I'm just never without the remedies as well, because for example, someone that maybe has, you know, regular panic attacks, it's always like, keep aconite in your handbag, just take it, use it like rescue remedy. It's amazing. It'll calm the nervous system down. So I think it's about, bringing conscious awareness to the nervous system, how it works, how it's wired. And that doesn't have to be a technical understanding. That's just a really simple understanding of ourselves, of like, when we feel like we're threatened, you know, the body's going to release all these hormones, all these things are going to happen. So then how do we start to calm that down? We've got horses. You might have seen some of my posts, and I don't at
Wonderful.
all. You know, like, often the horses can make me anxious. You know, if they get really like, oh, you know, and I can feel my anxiety coming up, because it's like, oh my goodness, here's this big animal. So, you know, for me, it's been trying to understand, where does that come from? What triggers that anxiety? And some of it is just your nervous system doing what it's meant to do. It's there to keep you safe. You know, so if the nervous system perceives a threat, it's got, you know, you're going to have adrenaline, you're going to have all of these things, because it's preparing you to fight, to flee, you know, those kind of things. And then of course the horse reads off whatever's going on in your nervous system as well. But what I was going to say about the horses, sorry, is that it's really well known in the people that are, you know, revolutionizing horse training, is you can't train the horse to do things when its nervous system is really activated, when it's in that fight, fright, freeze mode, you know. And they're flight animals, so they will just get out of there as quickly as they can. And it's the same with us. If our nervous system's really activated and we've got a lot of fear, you can't then be learning a lot of tools and things you've actually got to sort of almost calm the nervous system down, or find those spaces in between, and then you can start to teach people, here's some tools to step back. But often when it's overwhelming and it's continual, you've got to rely, I mean, I do rely on the remedies first to bring the nervous system back into balance, and then we can start explore the why, or the how the person got there, or is it a hormonal imbalance, is it from trauma, you know, is it from, some people I've got just watch way too much bad stuff online, you know, so lots of education about what do you want to put in your bowl, you know, that old kind of Indian, American Indian saying of like, what wolf do you want to feed? If you feed your nervous system with trauma, with horrible images and frightening things all the time, you know, the body doesn't know any different, so it will be ready to go. If you drink a whole lot of coffee and you're rushing to work and you're stressed, your body doesn't know the difference. It's going to think, okay, we're ready, we're ready to go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So that
absolutely.
consciousness is also bringing conscious awareness to make some wise choices around what you know, what you consume, and on all levels, you know, what you do with your time, who you hang out with, and be empowered to know that if you do drink a lot of coffee, you're probably going to feel wound up. If you do watch a lot of really negative stuff online, you're going to feel horrible about that, you know. Like, does that answer the question? It's probably a long
No,
answer.
absolutely. It's very, very, very beautifully answered. But I was going to ask you that the problem we all face is we're always in a flight mode, aren't we? You know, fight mode. You know,
Yeah.
it's always constant. There's one thing after another, and you know that there's that word that life can sometimes bring you things which are just relentless. You know, it's so many ups and downs. Even planning a holiday is not
Yeah.
that fun anymore, I have to say, because there's so much stress involved of the
Yeah.
organization, of the destination, of the flight, of the cost, of the tickets, of the packing, of the getting there, and everything else, you know. And that's just one tiny example. And then you've got just life itself, right?
Mm,
It's like go, 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 go. And, you know, it's so common in the 21st
mm,
century that even though we're well connected, I mean, look where you are, look where I am, and it's amazing. It's like we're literally in the same room. For a moment, I forgot that I was talking to you on the phone, you know. But at that time, at the same time, it brings a lot of pressure, doesn't it, on people?
mm,
And I see that in so many people, and they're just tired, and they just think, how
yeah.
do I switch off? What do I have to do? You know, and I think what you've said with as far as consciousness is concerned, and you know, as odd as it may sound, even to some, but meditation can actually really help. And if you
Mm,
ponder and reflect, and even reading a book, right, in the evening,
mm,
just to have some me time and just to
mm,
relax with a nice book, nothing sort of heavy, just a nice story, you know, maybe.
yeah. And nature, you know, I mean, we know that from our homeopathic remedies that, you know, so many of them come from nature, but time in nature, if you can,
Yeah,
really, really helps calm that nervous system down. And so much of what you're saying, so much of that activity that we do is very outward. So just to spend some time, you know, meditation, it doesn't have to be like, you know, particularly esoteric. Meditation can be a walk in the garden.
yeah,
Meditation can be sitting
yeah.
under a tree. You know, I had a friend that did a lot of kite surfing, and for him, meditation was kite surfing was meditation. That was where he found stillness. So it doesn't have to look like a certain thing. And often I'll say to people, just, you know, enjoy your morning coffee, light a candle, and just drink your coffee in front of the candle. It can be as
Mm.
simple as that, but it's not on your phone outward. It's just being with yourself. And of course, you know, for some people, being with yourself is really uncomfortable, so just notice that as well. It's no judgment. It's just like noticing, you know, this is uncomfortable, so you want to reach out and have a distraction. And we all do that, you know, we all have those distractions, shopping, watching stuff, you know, all of, because it's sort of like unfamiliar almost, even to be with
Mm.
the self. But
Yeah,
once you start, it's like a muscle, you know, once you start using it and just being with yourself, it becomes, you look forward to it. You know, it's like that precious time, like you say, where you're not busy, 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 busy. Um, but that is modern life. That is modern life, is that people financially need to work a lot and hard to survive, you know, two parents,
yeah.
and that is life. But then we have to find, for me, I think then we have to claim the time within that we do have for something for ourselves, to nourish ourselves.
You know, as you said that and you spoke about nature, I just saw behind you and the leaves
Yeah,
blowing in the wind. And I
we
thought,
have these.
how
I'm so
how
lucky.
beautiful.
I'm surrounded by 7 huge Pohutakawa trees. There's one I can see out my other window, which we think is close to 1,000 years old. And this
Wow.
time of the year, they are our New Zealand Christmas tree, so they're covered in these red flowers. But then all the red things fall, and then everything's covered in little like this red sort of layer. But the Robert Vandertown, who I mentioned to you before, did the New Zealand essences. He did the Pohutakawa tree. He's sort of a shaman, and he sort of travelled with the plants, and he calls them the grandmother, the Pohutakawa tree. He says they're the grandmother trees, and you know, it's quite amazing to think that these trees have been on this land for that long and what they've witnessed. And
Yeah,
mm,
absolutely. But how
yeah,
beautiful. So you're where you are now. That's we know that's for the listeners and those who, of
yeah,
course, the many who are going to watch back, of course. This you that's where you're working, but you also travel to mainland New Zealand from Waiheke Island. You have a
yeah.
clinic there, isn't it? I believe
Yeah, that's
in
right, in Auckland City.
yeah,
Yeah, I have a clinic there. I'm doing more and more work on Zoom. Like, I think COVID really helped in that way, of people like now, like we can connect and you
yeah,
forget that you're on, you know, like I've forgotten in lots of moments today that we're live, you know.
yeah,
You just get, you get so present with your connection with that person. So yeah, it's nice to be able to be in your own home environment and to connect with people, but it can be isolating too. You know, New Zealand's at the bottom of the world, and then I live off an island, off two islands at the bottom of the world. You know, and that's why I think it's so lovely with all the work that you're doing, because you're bringing us together as homeopaths. You know, so it does make the world seem a bit
Yeah,
smaller, not
thank you.
so distant.
So what have you been up to since the podcast? Tell me what's been going on over the
Yeah,
last sort of several months, and what are you planning, and are you
yeah.
getting ready for your end of year? It's the weather is not cold, is it? It's warm, isn't it?
Well, it's cold today, but yeah, we're still sort of slightly waiting for summer to come. It's still very, up and down. I think, the really interesting thing after our podcast was it really reconnected me with the practicality of homeopathy. Like just our discussion, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's, obviously there's times where it sounds kind of a bit out there, and maybe for some people a bit woo-woo, consciousness and homeopathy changing patterns and personalities and all this kind of stuff, but it's incredibly practical. And what happened was, after we had our last catch up, was I actually got the flu.
Oh,
And then I'm like, oh, now I need to find remedies for this, and it's quite hard to self-prescribe, because you're like, oh, I'm miserable, and I just
it's a
want,
nightmare, isn't it? It's a
I
nightmare,
just
honestly.
want
Oh,
this to go away, and I've had enough or whatever. But it, it really reconnected with me with it's just so incredibly practical,
mm,
homeopathy, and it can be so simple. And realizing that, I have a really huge passion around helping mums manage fevers really well in their children. So at some stage, I'd like to find the time to record something that I can share with people, because I think, yeah, it really excites me for some reason, helping people manage fevers well, because I think if you can do that at the beginning, it can curb so much of it going, the illness becoming worse.
mm.
And if you're a mother and you've got tools in your toolbox, like I'll try A, B, and C first, and if that doesn't work, then I contact the homeopath. So that really sort of sparked this reconnection with, yeah, I think at the time I was saying to you, I was doing mostly work with mental and emotional stuff, which is still
Mm.
a lot of what I do, but also this real practical element, coming in as well.
I think it's brilliant what you're doing, and of course with your Instagram reels that you do, especially the ones where you walk and introduce a
Yeah.
remedy. I actually find, we were talking about meditation, but
Yeah.
it's actually such a wonderful way to learn a remedy,
Mm,
because you're walking and the backgrounds are beautiful, of course.
yeah.
You're in New
Yeah.
Zealand. I mean, it's going to be, right? But
Yeah.
it's just that the fact that you're actually learning at the same time as being able to relax. And I
Mm.
love those. And please do keep more coming in. And
Oh, thank you.
also the reels and the slides that you do as well on your stories, and
Yeah.
on holistichealing.nz for
Yeah.
those who are interested. I
Holistic
did get it right,
homeopathy.
didn't I? Yeah.
Holistichomeopathy.nz. Yeah.
Sorry, holistic
There
homeopathy.
you go.
It's live. Hey, bloopers.
It,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Holistichomeopathy.nz. So yeah, do more of those,
Yeah.
because I think it really makes a difference, and it makes learning remedies. I mean, you can spend your whole life learning a remedy, right? But as
Mm.
far as introductions go, and just getting an idea, I think it's so
Mm. And
and
trying to
and
keep
you've
it
got a
really
good
simple
way
too.
of doing it as well. It's quite
Yeah.
calming, and you think, wow, this is nice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And just trying to keep it kind of simple. I think the thing I'm trying to do with Instagram too is to connect with more like what needs to come through, rather than me going, right, I need to post da 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 da. It's
Mm,
like, okay, come back to a more, a still place inside, and you know what needs to come through here, what needs to be expressed, rather than imposing, oh, I want to share, because you can, again, it can be another distraction where you're like, oh gee, I
yeah,
feel like I've got to post all this stuff. But coming back to a place of stillness and going, what needs to be expressed here? And hopefully, I think if you come from that genuine place, then it will be something that's helpful for somebody else. But I really, it is definitely a passion of mine to, I think, to share that knowledge and keep it simple. But if
mm,
you've got something that could help someone else, for me, it's a bit hard to I can't keep that to myself.
I know the feeling. I know the
Yeah,
feeling.
yeah.
Okay. What are you up to for the next few months? End of year, are you planning lots of time off, which is
Yeah,
very important for everybody. I think it's a good opportunity
yeah,
to relax, isn't it? And unwind, which
yeah,
is so, so important.
yeah. So summertime's here. I've got my son coming from over where you are, actually,
Ah, yeah.
coming in the
I have
new
sent
year.
I have said few hi's to him.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
have connected on WhatsApp.
yeah. So I've got 3 adult sons and a daughter who's 13. So yeah, some of them will be home for Christmas. One of my sons graduates with an engineering degree tomorrow, so that's
Oh,
pretty exciting.
congratulations.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Pretty.
nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really nice. It's
We
taken a
heard it
bit.
first here on Insta Live.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty exciting, and summer's here, so we will be doing a lot of time with the horses, doing things over summer and at the beach. And yeah, so I try and keep it quite light over the because for me spending
Yeah.
time with family is like incredibly precious, so I make sure that that's a priority. But often, it gets busy before Christmas because people are stressed, like you say, and people really need that support. So often, and then quite often what happens in New Zealand is then in January, nobody has any problems because they're all on holiday. So
Yeah.
January can be quite quiet. It's like everyone's on holiday, they've forgotten, and then February happens, and then people are like, oh, back to reality, and this thing's still a problem that was bothering me. So that's the pattern that I've seen over the years happen. December's really busy, January can be quiet, and then February starts to get,
Like busy, isn't it? But it's nice to forget about things.
back to reality for people. Yeah, yeah,
Nice to forget about things. And family time is so, so precious. Like you said it so eloquently. I mean, it is, it is precious. And the more time that we spend to reconnect, it's so important, isn't it? Because
mm,
without that, I mean, it's, everything else is always going to be there, right? But to spend time with family and to laugh and to share stories and just to be amongst or within each other's presence, I think, or near, it's nice,
yeah,
isn't it? It's so
yeah,
calming. And that's also a
yeah,
form of meditation,
yeah,
because um, it brings
exactly.
out, love, and it brings out memories, and you're creating new memories, right? It's lovely.
Mm, mm, yeah.
Yeah,
Do I get to
great.
ask a question now, Atik?
Do you want to ask me a question?
Yeah.
Go on then.
Yeah,
Hit me with
yeah.
it.
I'm really curious to know how you started doing, what was the inspiration to start doing all these podcasts, because it must be an enormous amount of work time outside of your practice. You're not getting paid for it. So basically it's your voluntary contribution to homeopathy. And I just was thinking this morning, I wonder what inspired you. How did that journey go?
It's quite interesting. It's an interesting question because I started at UK Health Radio 10 years ago,
Okay.
and podcasts won out, or they won. I don't know, to be honest, but I don't think it was a podcast environment at that time. 10 years, a long time ago. And it was very much radio. And I started doing something called Homeopathy for Life. That's what the show was called, the Homeopathy for Life show. And I did those, and I first started off doing shorts, so just like 15-minute segments. And it was actually Remedy of the Week or Remedy of the Day. Pretty much like the stuff that you're doing on Insta, which is obviously far
Yeah.
better. Mine was really crude form at that time, right? But and then I became quite busy with my practice. I needed to spend time. So I sort of slowed down on that side. And then last year, I don't know what it was. It was almost just like a spark that was within me. And I thought, I need to start this. I don't actually know why, honestly, that's the truth. But it just felt like I had to do it. I don't know why. And then I contacted the CEO. Obviously, we stayed in touch anyway, so we're good friends. And he said, "Yeah, happy to restart or start again, whichever." And the rest is history. And
Mm.
it's funny, isn't it? It's such an interesting question, but I actually don't know the true reason why. But what I do know is I'm head over heels about it,
Mm.
about promoting homeopathy and getting people on board. And because of the podcast, I think we're nearing about 60,000 or just above listeners now to the
Wow.
podcast. And
Wow.
I haven't released those figures actually yet because I was just waiting just to make sure, you know, that they
Yeah.
because they come through and from the radio station and stuff like that. And then you have to
Yeah.
amalgamate podcast listens as well. And it's quite technical actually, but and very time consuming. But
Mm.
yeah, and it's just brought. I mean, look, because of that, introducing homeopathy, and look, we're talking about that, and we're promoting it, and it's like
Yeah.
another 50 people on board, and different communities, and homeopaths are coming together, and students know, and they know about Tania Aroha-Twentyman, but they don't know what she sounds like, and now they do, and now they know what what your thought
Yeah.
processes are,
Yeah.
and it's bringing that tangible, real feel. It's
Mm.
bringing homeopathy, the voice of homeopathy, but also the image of homeopathy, out there on today's digital platforms, So
Mm.
people can now listen to Jan Scholten and say, wow, we read his book, but oh wow, we've seen him as well, on a
Yeah.
clip, and this is what he
Yeah.
looks like, and this is what he sounds like, and oh, he's very intelligent, and whoever. I just use that as an example, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and everybody, or a graduate, or a recent student, or a student, or a recent graduate rather, and when they explain what it's like to be a homeopath, or the journey that they've taken, or what books they're reading at the moment because they're in a course, who knows who will be inspired in which part of the world,
Mm.
you know.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't know if that didn't really answer your question, did it?
No,
I don't
it
know what,
totally did. And it really made it, it connects me with that thing that I was saying to you about with Instagram trying to allow what needs to be expressed to come through. Something was ignited in you. And I think that's the same kind of thing that we're talking about when, how many years ago was it now? Maybe 6 or so years ago, maybe longer than that. I had a similar thing of establishing a little Steiner school on Waiheke Island, and it didn't come from me, it came through me, and it was just that life, it would just, like you say, it was a passion, and people were like, we had no money, like the group that kind of formed, and I had another project manager that I worked with, and we just, it just happened, and people were like, you can't just start a school, and we were like, yeah, we're going to, it's going to
yeah,
happen, like,
absolutely, yeah.
and yeah, so this little Steiner school got created, and there's children there being educated, and it's kind of left, it's a legacy, I guess, that you leave, that all these families are going to come to this school and have this experience. But it wasn't, I think it's a similar thing. It just came through me. There was so much energy for it. It
Yeah.
just, and then that it's sort of some kind of calling that needs to happen, because it's not exhausting. I mean, you get tired, but it in of itself is not exhausting. It just, there's energy for it.
Yeah, you can't get bored of it. I mean, I
Yeah.
love the podcasts. I've done well, obviously, because we keep in touch anyhow. But so much is going on, and then the same thing goes for this. This Instagram live series was just a spark. I don't actually know how it happened, and I thought, this is going to be nice because it gets more people on, and it's also an opportunity to catch up with old friends who've been on the show. And here we are, episode 2, and I've got planned already our 10 episodes, and it's obviously going to continue. But that's 10 are already full.
Yeah.
People are waiting now.
Yeah.
People are asking me, when can we come on? And I'm thinking, hang on, I need to get the 10 out of the way first,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
we'll do the next 10, in batches.
But just speaking with that, because it's really reminded me of something, that when you give a really good homeopathic remedy, it puts the person back in touch with this invisible thing that we're both trying to find words to describe, which is indescribable. But I think an outcome of that is this connection again with one's creativity, so there's this creative, life-giving element, and when you give a really good remedy, it connects people back to that vitality, and it might not be that they're connected with that forever, but often there's this sort of remembering of that place, and from it, just inherently in it seems to be a creative principle somehow, or a creative force, and that might be creativity in mothering, or it might be making a garden, or writing a book, or it doesn't have to be that you're an artist. it could be creativity in your thinking, you know, dynamic thinking, thinking outside the box, brainstorming if you're in a corporate environment, that kind of creativity. But it seems to be inherently wound up with that. Again, I can't find words to describe it because it's not of words. But when you experience it, you feel
it. It's that inner zeal, isn't it? And there's an inner calling, the inner zeal, you know, and it like it starts and everything falls into place. So nice. I mean, like I said, I've only done one, haven't I? This is episode 2, but I've got enough for 10 now. And I know that there's another 10. I know 100%. This is going to carry on for hundreds anyway, as I know. I know it's going to happen, but it's just nice. And you know, when something like this comes to fruition, you think, this is good because people are tuning in and it's making a difference. And it's a different take to the podcast as well, right? You know, a bit more relaxed, I suppose. And video-based. People like videos. Right?
Yeah. That's right.
Oh, it's been absolutely wonderful, Tania, speaking to you. And I know that we're going to talk very soon. Definitely, you know, now we've got 2 options. We can go Insta Live or we can go Homeopathy Health Podcast.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on. It was fun. That was great. I was a little bit nervous, like, how does this? I haven't done Instagram Live before, but like I said, you get the connection and then you forget that, you know, your vibe.
Absolutely. And may it get hundreds and hundreds of playbacks as well.
Yeah.
I'll share it with you after we go off air as well.
Beautiful.
Well, take care and
thank you so
have a nice
much.
Christmas and everything. And New
Merry
Year.
Christmas to you too and your family.
And, enjoy and relax, and I'll keep in touch, of course.
Yeah, lovely. One thing I just wanted to say, again, to reiterate for any of those students that are watching or people that are new to their practice is just, you know, again, coming back to that thing of just start one person at a time, you know, just kind of don't be intimidated by, you know, the big voices and the big practices and stuff, because if every one of us is making a little difference in our corner of the world by helping people through homeopathy or, you know, in whatever way we can, then gradually that lights up the whole planet, you know. So I would really encourage students and people that, like I said, coming back to their practices or whatever, just do your good work in the world. And it's all that's it, really.
That's so beautifully said. I have nothing else to say.
Yeah.
That ended on a very beautiful way. Thank you so very much.
Yes.
And I'll speak to you offline, of course.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
care.
Auntie.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.